Good afternoon again.
Shalom lekulam.
So with me is
Hi,
Stefan Zeyberט, who is the ambassador of Germany to Israel. And as I asked the French ambassador before, Germany actually now has the highest number of German citizens hostages in Gaza still. What is Germany doing for them now?
Yes, that's true. We have a little over a dozen German citizens somewhere in the tunnels of Gaza, and I have, over the many months, established a very warm and close contact with their families. I've been to more Shiva and more funerals than I ever thought I would go to, and I've certainly understood one thing, and that is also the line the German government takes. There is no more important goal now than to bring these people out, than to get them free. There can be no more important goal. And this is what we tell everyone, including our Israeli friends. We tell them, you must prioritize this. And yes, other considerations should step back. This is what we hear from so many Israelis, not just the families. We hear that the idea that, or the image of hostages coming out and being saved, this is the one thing that they say will heal their Israeli souls. And I can completely understand that. So this is what we try to do. We do not have negotiations with Hamas because we can't give them anything. But we speak to anyone who might have influence, anyone who might have influence on Hamas, and of course we speak to the Israeli government.
And I know that Germany is mostly supported Israel since October in terms of policy, including, by the way, if we think about the previous lecture, the ICJ and the ICC, Germany is actually quite supportive of the Israeli government in those establishments. But there's also criticism. There's criticism on what has been happening in Gaza and also criticism about the West Bank.
Yes, there is. I'll come to the criticism in a second. I just want to say, yes, we saw October 7th as what I believe it was. It was a monstrous terrorist crime, actually thousands of crimes. And it's still going on with the treatment of the hostages. And we support it, and we support Israel in its self-defense, in its attempt, which, yes, I understand it had to be a military attempt to prevent Hamas from ever doing something like that again. That has our full support as an act of self-defense within the rules of international law. Now, if you look at the war now, almost a year old, 41,000 dead people in Gaza, and okay, I will subtract, or whatever the word in English is, take away 15,000, 17,000 Hamas fighters, because that's the number we hear from the IDF. That still leaves over 20,000 dead civilians, and that tells you that even though I'm sure the IDF made a lot of efforts to spare the civilian population, obviously the number also speaks for itself. It wasn't enough. We've been urging very early on that it's also Israel's responsibility to bring in as much humanitarian aid as needed. There was a bit of a slow start. I will say that I think that Israel is making major efforts to bring in humanitarian aid. I know people at Kogat who work tirelessly on this, and yet, if you look at the situation, it's clearly not enough. Sigrid Kaag, the UN Special Envoy, who's a very sober, non-ideological person, says it's a significant catastrophe. And we have to take that into account. More needs to happen, and there is Israeli responsibility in this. The criticism maybe in general, and that takes us away from Gaza and takes us closer to the issue that the lady professor was talking about. It's not a coincidence that I am the ambassador of Germany to Israel in the borders of 1967, within the Green Line. I'm not the ambassador for Ramallah, and not even for East Jerusalem, and not for the Golan Heights. That's not by coincidence. the Israel that we have a very strong, steadfast, and permanent commitment to. That is the Israel within the internationally acknowledged borders. We do not support the settlements, and even less the idea that they should be expanded all the time. And if you look at the occupation in its 58th year, it's very hard to say it's temporary. And there are, of course, political forces in this country that are working hard on turning a temporary occupation into a permanent one.
And maybe now even in Gaza.
Going from occupation to possession. And I think Israel must know, and they do know, that countries like mine, other European countries, also I think the United States, are not going to stand by idly when that happens. So our support for Israel is very strong. It's very principled. For me, it's a personal matter. And I think Frédéric just said it 10 minutes ago. We're friends, so we have to speak openly with one another, honestly with one another. As a friend, also in private life, you don't tell your friend everything you do is perfect. They also speak very honestly to us, and that's how it should be.
So regarding that criticism and the international forums, does Germany support the EU sanctions on extreme settlers?
Yes, these sanctions are always taken in the circle of 27 countries. And we are part of that. Yes, we have, I can't tell you the exact number, but there are a number of extremist violent settlers where there is a clear proof of their involvement in violent acts. And yes, they have been sanctioned, and I think they should be. And if there are more individuals where there's also clear proof, because, you know, the attacks are going on. Every day, I don't know, but certainly every week there are acts of harassment or outright violence against Palestinian shepherds, Palestinian olive growers, and this cannot go with impunity. I think it's happened because there was a sense of impunity. And if we in Germany and in Europe can do something to at least show people that there is not impunity, but that this will have consequences, yes, that's what we're going to do.
And then there's wow, you're getting more applause than some of the Israeli politicians.
Sorry?
You're getting more applause than some of the Israeli politicians.
Maybe I should stop
think
then.
of another career.
It's never a good sign for an ambassador.
No, I think it means that it's interesting. So there's the sanctions on extreme settlers, but there's also the European idea now to sanction far-right ministers in Israel. Where does Germany stand on that?
This has just begun to be discussed, and I will not speculate where that discussion leads us. As I said, individuals where there's clear proof of their own physical involvement in acts of violence, we've done that, we will continue to do that. Whether we will go one step further towards those people who enable these acts of violence, that's another question. It's being discussed within Europe, also with our friends in the US and other countries, and I think that's all I can say about it right now.
So I don't know if the audience knows, but you also had a long career as a journalist, and you were the spokesperson for Chancellor Merkel and the federal government, of course. So I'm allowing myself to also ask you a domestic question, not only in terms of the relations with Israel.
Oh, domestic in Germany?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, we've been seeing the worrying news about the far right also rising in Germany, not only in Israel. And so I was wondering, you know, what's your perspective on that? And do you see also any similarities, you know, global trends in that field? Because we see the far right is growing everywhere.
Yes, there is a resurgence of the far right, I would say in some cases the extreme right, in Germany, recently highlighted by regional elections we had in eastern German states. I can't even tell you how much it worries and pains me. And at the same time, I find myself explaining to all my Israeli friends that no, a far right takeover or anything like that on the national level is not around the corner. It's not going to happen. There are very specific reasons for this. I think they need to be taken very seriously. But these elections affect something like under 10% of the German population. And the AfD, which is this far-right party, doesn't have anything like the numbers they have in Saxony in the very populous parts of Germany, north, west, and center. But it worries me. What worries me is that there is this very strong, I mean, people blame everything on migrants, and this happens in the parts of the country where there's the lowest number of migrants. So you can see that there is a certain scapegoat thing going on. People have a very strong distaste of what they see as the political elite. So they're willing to all of a sudden vote pretty extreme. And basically, and I think this is psychologically, it's not very scientific what I'm saying, but my psychological take here is that people see that the world has become extremely turbulent. I mean, there is so much change going on. There is a war in Europe, there is migration, there is digitalization, there is a change in the industries, there are energy policies which are very challenging. And basically people are saying, leave me alone. Don't bother me with what's going on in the outside world. I want my life to be as it always was, which I think no politician can promise anyone. So they're going, unfortunately, right now for very extreme solutions. I hope we can take the issues seriously and at the same time weaken these extremist movements. So this is, I think, the German picture, and it's probably, you know, around the same issues in other countries as well.
How do you think we can convince these people that that's not a solution?
Well, tough one. I think migration is very important. Now, I absolutely defend the fact that Germany has become a country of immigration. We're in the middle of Europe, we're an attractive country, and we're a very aging country, so obviously migration will be a factor. There is illegal immigration, which maybe we have not worked hard enough against. This is why, as of this week, there are now, which was very unthinkable almost, there are now temporary but long-term border controls within Europe as to our neighboring countries. That's a big, in unified Europe, that's a big thing to do. But if it helps to bring down the number of illegal immigration and keep migration as an idea and as a part of, you know, a way of life for Germany, which it has to be, I think that's the right step to take. You have to take the issues seriously, but not desert your basic values, which are the basic values of the Constitution, of individual dignity, of democracy.
Thank you. And since we still have a few minutes, I will also ask you about the escalation in the north, and is Germany involved in de-escalating it?
We do not play the role in Lebanon that France plays, and Frédéric Journes explained to you. We see, I was in Kiryat Shmona and Chanita and had a look at these really ghost towns, which is what they are now. And I can understand that no country can accept that part of its territory cannot be inhabited. And so something needs to happen. I completely understand that. I see a very strong link with what goes on in Gaza. One of the reasons why I hope there will be a ceasefire in Gaza soon, not just the hostages, not just the situation of the civilians in Gaza, but also I hope that it will open a door to a non-military solution up north. I'm worried that some people in this country are talking very freely and about the possibility of a major war up north. I can understand the reasons, but I really fear what this war would look like on both sides of the border, and whether that will pave the way for the people of Chanita and Kiryat Shmona to come back to their houses, or whether that will create wholesale destruction on both sides of the border, I mean, that's at least a question that I have. So I would really very much like to see a non-military solution, but I understand that this is also something where the international community would have to play a very responsible part.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and also for the efforts regarding the hostages.
Danke, שטפן זייברט.